Okay, good evening. And the first time trying a hybrid for singing this work, and even not knowing who's in the room, I was going to say the following thing. I think maybe a surprise to a person in the room, that the shir is Ilui Nishmas Yaakov Noah Ben Tuvia, his Yotzeit, is tonight. And we wish Annette my miracle. And that was being said regardless of who was here and who was not being here, it was there. I want to, before I even begin to explain, I want to begin with something very, I think very unusual about the whole issue. Oh, sorry, let me just pin myself because otherwise there are other people on the screen now. I want to begin with something unusual. It's a peculiar time of year. We're in Elul and Tishrei. What would you say is the most striking thing about Elul and Tishrei? If you had to name one word or one concept of being connected with Elul and Tishrei. Teshuvah, okay. Any thoughts? You can say something. You can say something.
I think it's visiting the grave sites.
Interesting. Okay, visiting grave sites. Yes, that's certainly one. Yeah, some people would say apples and honey. Some people would say shofar. I mean, going to shul. All these things again. Interesting things do come up. There is a book of halacha that many people have heard about called the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the shorter code of Jewish law. Sorry, do you want to answer the door? Sorry, the shorter code of Jewish law. And in that, Rabbi Gansfeld begins with a halacha on Rosh Hashanah. I don't know if you know it. It begins by saying that the very first halacha that they talk about at this time of the year, they mention very clearly the whole Kedoshim, every Kaddish that you say in the beginning of Tishrei has the additional word, we say la'ela, la'ela. We double the word la'ela. And then it goes on to say, the peculiar halakha itself. I mean, that's certainly not what I would have begun with talking about, the halakha of dealing with Tishrei and Elul. But he then goes on to say that because it's then necessary to have 28 words in Kaddish, and we say la'ela, la'ela, we contract min kol to mikol. So we have to have 28 words in Kaddish. And I know everyone thinks it's going to be Shem Kohelet. It will be, but let's get on to it. Now, why on earth or what are the 28 words in Kaddish? 28 words in Kaddish, interestingly enough, are clarified from the words Yehei Shmei Rabbah until Damiram Ba'alma. And for that reason, if you go to Sephardi shul, they all say that out loud because they say the 28 words out loud. We only say Yehei Shmei Rabbah out loud unto Ye'olam Olmei. And that phrase that we say contains 28 letters. Why? What's the significance of 28? 28 is linked to the word koach, strength, because that's got the numerical value of 28. And that is an idea, it's linked to 28. And we're told in the Gemara in Shabbat, actually, that whoever says Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah, the whole sentence through, gets strength. They're given strength for everything, strength in everything they do, and any judgments that's appropriate for Elul. Any judgments about them are then ripped up and thrown away. But there's another linkage of 28, and that's why it's relevant for today. Kaddish, as we know, we say when you're an Oval, we say during the year. But very interesting enough, 28 and the connection with 28 is also a link to something in Kohelet. In chapter 3 in Kohelet, is a fascinating idea of a beginning, because it begins, chapter 3 of Kohelet begins, to everything there's a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. It says a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up. time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, etc. It goes through all those circles in Kohelet. And the idea is that that's 28 phrases, and that's linked to the number of the words we say in Kaddish. So, and that really is what Kohelet is trying to do. The importance of Kohelet is it's trying to cover everything, life and death, our entire experience. Also, of course, 28 years, and the significance of 28 was, I was saying, there's a whole idea in Kaddish, we say 28 words. We add extra words, and we keep it as 28 words. And this whole idea is that everything we have is connected in those 28 words. And that's why part of what Kohelet is about is having the whole life cycle and the importance of the life cycle. And that is part of what studying Kohelet does. It means we encompass the life cycle and everything about the life cycle. So that is a peculiar introduction. Let's get down to the real beginning. Why are we here and what are we doing? And that's really what Kohelet is about, interestingly enough. Kohelet, probably more than any book, is about life and the meaning of life. And I think we tend not to study Kohelet. We tend not to think about Kohelet. It's read beautifully, some years, by Josh with in our shul with reading it from the clough from parchment. And it's a very complicated thing. And some people say it's a very depressing book to read. But what the author seems to do, and we'll get on to the author in a minute, what the author seems to want to do is actually tell us how to be happy. And if you read through Kohelet, you think that's the last thing you'll ever do by reading this book. In fact, I remember one person saying he tried to learn through Kohelet and he got so depressed he nearly needed medical treatment for reading Kohelet. But Kohelet is about happiness. It is about achieving happiness and trying to work out what the happy purpose of life is. So that's part of the reason we're here. The other reason we're here is when I started thinking about what we were going to study during Elul, I got contacted by people who at that stage were in Israel, telling me about a project that was being run in Netanya, where a number of shuls were coming together to learn Kohelet collectively. And the way they've done it, or tried to do it, is on Sunday nights they're having a live shiur that's recorded on Zoom, and they're also having an opportunity for people to get together during the week to study Kohelet with the idea of a collective siyum on Hoshana Rabbah. We haven't quite, for technical reasons, managed to catch up with them and liaise with them, although there are ongoing discussions still going on as we're trying to communicate with them. But we thought it would be a nice idea to study Kohelet. We are able to access all the Sunday night shiurim that they've had. Some of them have been outstanding. The ones that haven't been, I haven't heard, because I haven't heard all of them, but they are some very, very good shiurim. But we've also had some of our own shiurim over the years on Kohelet as a principle. And I'm going to, again, circulate them, maybe even if we can get them up on the web or wherever we'll get them. So I thought it was an idea for us. And it's also, I thought it was a lovely idea that we could actually get together and see people rather than just on Zoom. And I do appreciate the people on Zoom. It's lovely to see you there. And I will keep trying to remember that you are there. So if you have anything to say, please do. But I wanted to really begin just to look at a text and to understand the text and see what Kohelet was all about. And again, the advantage of Kohelet is that every single word in it tells us something, teaches us something, and probably more than any other book. And it's fascinating because, again, the original commentators felt that it was important enough that Kohelet was being included in Tanakh, felt that it was important enough that we should all study Kohelet. And they always said, and this is something that was fascinating for discussion, they always said that Kohelet was written by King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech. More recent commentators have been saying, no, it's not like that. It can't have been written by him. It's got to have been written by someone else. And there are contradictions in there. And there are contradictions and there are repetitions. But I think part of that is because Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, was trying to teach in a way that would cross generations. And I think there are some things that really are there for us. And again, why is it now and why is it light after darkness? Because I think Kohelet, more than any other book, shows us that yes, there is a meaning, that we're here for a purpose. We can actually get something out and try and understand everything that's going on in the world if we just spend a little bit of time thinking about things carefully. And hopefully, as we'll get to see, it's trying to stop us doing the knee-jerk emotional reactions. And that's something the way we've been talking about in the Kohelet Shiur about when we're talking about the release of captives. Knee-jerk immediate reaction is, well, of course, you've got to free everyone. But then when you sit back and think about it and realize why there's a halakha that says, no, there are certain restrictions, move the head away from the emotions. And sometimes you realize that there are other reasons there. And I think that's part of what is going on in Kohelet. So I think that is a fair introduction. I will also, you've got this as well, haven't you? Maybe not.
No.
Oh, okay. I've also got the sources that have come through from Israel that I can make available to everyone, and we'll send out links to that. So without further ado, let's look at the book. And let me just get it up on screen for them. Sorry, there are various Kohelets. What's the plural of Kohelet? Various Koheletim around the room. Yeah, I think they've all got pages marked in them.
Oh, these pages.
At least at some stage there should be. Okay, and that one there isn't. Yeah, I thought there was.
There.
No, sorry. Let me just get this. Should be in there somewhere. It's in this one here. It's in that one there. It's in that one there as well. It's marked. It's where the ribbon is in that one.
Somebody wants this stuff. It's not.
It should be around everyone. Okay. And why on earth was it written? The whole idea of Kohelet seems to be that he wanted everyone, as he says towards the end of Kohelet, to come and revere Hashem and observe his commandments, observe the mitzvot. So it's ideal for Elul. And it's a way, Kohelet is a way to get people introspecting, looking at themselves and going forward. And it's entirely based on King Solomon's ideas that he wants to answer the questions, or perhaps maybe even teach us to answer the questions that are fundamental in life. Who are we? What are we? What are our values? What are our ambitions? What makes us different from everyone else? It's important to us. And to get us to think about those ideas. And hopefully that's what we'll manage to do is to really get down to the basis of what we're doing. So yeah, please do. Oh, that's a whole shiur in itself. Put simply, and I'm going to put it simply, but I will come back to it because I think it's a pretty question, is part of the reasons that Sukkot is what are we doing? We realize the vulnerability, our dependence on Hashem. It's also, and again, it's a peculiarity, its aim is happiness. And Sukkot is the season of our happiness. Now, most people who've just read through Kohelet, you're going to sit through and go, like, excuse me, what is the point of life? I think you get to line 2 and you think, give up. I'm going off to do something unmentionable. But that's not what he's about. What he's going to try and tell us is that there is a little bit more to life than the latest iPad 16 or iPhone 16, not the latest car, the latest this, the latest that. And to realize that actually we should be happy with those 4 flimsy walls, etc. And I think that's part of the massive idea that we're getting or should be getting from it, to realize that perhaps we're misdirected. And what a task he set himself over the generations to say, I'm going to try and actually undermine everything that I know is going to go on in the world.
What, what does Kohelet actually mean? Like, why would he say the words of Kohelet, son of David? Why not the words of
Right.
son of David?
The word Kohelet comes from the Hakhil to gather. And it's the idea that he wanted to gather everyone together to tell them about it. And he did a gathering, and what his idea was to gather everyone together and tell them what they needed to do to live in the world. So again, it comes from Kohelet. Rashi is the first person who identifies it as Kohelet. But if you work out who else could it really be? Divrei Kohelet ben David Melech Yerushalayim. Who else was the son of David? Avshalom, arguably, but he didn't become King Yerushalayim. But it's the whole idea that he's hiding himself behind that, but identifying. So he wanted to make sure, and this whole idea again seems to be quite clear, that he's not just talking to the people there with him. He's talking to everyone, all generations, future generations, whether you're alive or not. And that's why he also uses the word Kohelet, because he wants to gather everyone into a kahal and community, wherever you are, whatever generation, whatever you are. It's meant to be understood for us as we go forward, for the past, and everyone together. So it's again an idea. Yerushalayim was the place where everyone gathered, and that's where people were known to gather together to learn. It was known as a city of wisdom. And that's the whole idea. It was a city known for the wisdom, and that's where he wanted to get that across, this idea. And then he begins with this simple level, just basically saying, give up. Hevel havalim amar Kohelet. Hevel havalim hakol hevel. It says, vanity, vanity, said Kohelet, vanity, vanity is all is vanity. It says in the Lakewood, New Jersey translation here. I've got futility, utter futility, utter futility, all is futile.
The other translation I heard was ephemeral.
Ephemeral, yeah.
But it's like a breath, it's common.
Which people again use hevel as a breath, and I think Jonathan Sacks, Shalom, used that whole idea of hevel being a breath to blast it away. Now, how many times does he use hevel? In that sentence. In that sentence, he uses hevel 5 times. Now, that in itself is apparently a clue that he's giving to us. It's not just an accident that he's using the word hevel 5 times. Now, he's saying there is no meaning, there's no value to life in the world. But he's actually telling us something. Each time he uses hevel is to suggest that there are 5 or different levels for our souls, each one deeper than the last. So, and this is an important idea that he puts across. The first level of the soul is nefesh. We may have heard of nefesh. And I'm not knocking nefesh at Torah, that they're the lowest level, but nefesh is the bottom level. And that nefesh, the whole idea of nefesh, is the basic spiritual level that everyone needs just to exist. We then move up to the idea, Kabbalistic idea as much as anything else. The next level up is ruach. And the idea of ruach, again, breath, the idea of that, is that it's the spirituality behind our emotions and instincts. The third level, and again, it comes through, again, sentence after sentence, we get into this a bit more. The third level is neshama. We always talk about the neshama being the soul. And that's the spiritual impetus for our intelligence, our intellect. We then have the fourth level that's often referred to in Kabbalistic books of chaya, which connects those first 3 levels of nefesh, ruach, and neshama to the last one, yechida. Now, yechida, the idea of yechida in Kabbalah, is the connection with the original spark of godliness, of divinity, which Hashem put into Adam HaRishon, the first man, at the time of creation. And that's why, in this perspective, Hevel doesn't mean futility, doesn't mean vanity, but means, as Rabbi Sachs picks out, it means breath, the breath of God. And what he's saying here, all is vanity. Yes. Every single thing is sourced directly from the breath of God. Everything. Hashem created it. He maintains it. He allows it to continue existing. So, yeah, on a nice superficial level that we all happily read it through, and certainly I was doing up until I really started looking into it and thinking, seeing that everything in the world is meaningless. Everything in the world has got no value at all. If we think about things, everything that exists decays, decomposes, gets forgotten about. Nothing's of lasting value. What Shlomo Melech is saying here, yes, things are. But you can actually, if you tap into a deeper perspective in life, if you see everything as coming from Hashem, from the beginning of time, you actually think the opposite. Everything has got the potential to impact the world. Everything can do something to the world because there's a source with the creator, which is a totally different, almost the reverse of what we originally think of it as. He's actually telling us that if we want it, if we decide to do something about it, we decide to make that connection. That's really what Elul is all about as well, making that connection. If we want to make the connection, then everything can actually be connected with Hashem. If you don't want to make the connection, you can carry on being meaningless. Now, again, it moves on in the next pasuk. Ma yitram la'adam ochel hamalo shemo tachas hashemesh. And again, it's on a superficial level, we're moaning about how the fact that life is really meaningless. You've gone to work, you've worked hard all day, and then what do you have to show for it? At the end of 120 years, you've done nothing. A few generations away, they're not going to even know you. Yet we can all go to as Ian said, we all go to the graves in Elul, but 3 generations away, 4 generations, is anyone going to visit? No, it's all gone. We're completely utterly forgotten about. And that's what superficially he seems to be saying. Like, what value is there for us in everything we gain under the sun? What profit does man have for his labors, which he labors beneath the sun? Dig underneath, and he's doing something completely different. Totally different message coming. What he's saying is, you know what? Life can be meaningless. Life can be absolutely pointless. But how do you move on from that meaningless to make your life have some value? And what does he say? The work that is meaningless is the work under the sun. What's the significance? We're told, again, it's a Kabbalistic idea that he clearly knew, or has been adapted from him. The sun represents the 3rd level of the soul, the neshama. That's the spiritual force that drives our intellect, gets us going. The products under the sun are nefesh and ruach. And this is an idea he keeps coming back. He mentions almost 28 times everything being under the sun. It keeps being repeated throughout Kohelet. So what he's saying is things that come from nefesh, the basic idea of the soul, and ruach, slightly up, are physical and finite. And they're nothingness. Everything above the sun gets you to a deeper source. It gets you to your neshama, your chaya, your chida. If it's spiritual, it's got value, because spirituality is connected to God, and everything spiritual can exist forever. I think maybe I just want to actually spend a minute on the neshama, because the neshama, we're told, is a force which drives us to connect to truth. Now, that's different to just making the difference between good and bad. Truth is something very different to good and bad. Something can be good to me and bad for you, or vice versa. The neshama helps us try and differentiate from objective truth from subjective good. Now, let me try and give an example, and food is always a useful thing. If I'm motivated by what's good, I may well decide what my taste buds like. What am I in the mood for today? If I'm going for truth, then I'm going to go according to nutrition, health, and energy. And I think that's a big difference. And I think what Shlomo Melech is trying to say is, when we use the neshama to make our decisions, we're using an objective lens. And that's why this whole idea of moving to an objective lens to move on. If we use truth rather than falsehood, obviously, or subjective good, we can actually get rid of loads of things in our lives. And that, I think, is something that Shlomo HaMelech is trying to get us to do, to sit back and move away from our emotional response, moving away from what we like to what's good for us. And what we're trying to do is choose better things in our lives. You may have heard that there's this whole idea of Chabad, Chochmah, Bina, and Dart. The Dart is intellect or intelligence. And the whole idea, again, behind Chabad is to use that level of your intelligence in making decisions. And that's why what we need to do is sometimes think about our lives and try and use that intelligence, to use the neshama to think about things rationally. Now, it's hard to do. And I don't think they're trying to even pretend that it's something we can just plug into. But what I think Kohelet is trying to get at, even at the beginning here, is to say that we need to think about things very differently to the way we do. And I think what he's trying to tell us is that we have to treat everything with the idea of the neshama and Dart, to use our higher level, have things above the sun. Let me give you another example, which I think explains things. We often refer to, and I know in schools they do it, the difference between Kodesh and Chol. We talk about that. Holy and mundane. Put on simple, if you go to shul, that's Kodesh, that's spiritual. If you're having a chat with friends about football, that's Chol, that's mundane. Learning Torah is in theory spiritual. Being an actuary is in theory mundane. I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying in theory that's the way people say. Now, what I'm actually saying is Shlomo HaMelech says, no, that's wrong. What he's perhaps saying is we have to look at what motivates what we do. And absolutely everything can be at the higher level, and absolutely everything can be at your lower level.
Mm.
So you don't have to differentiate between Kodesh and Chol, you're differentiating between your levels. I mean, a standard thing, you can actually go to shul, and theoretically that's Kodesh and spiritual, but you know what? It may not be.
Mm.
Because if we're just saying, I'm doing the right thing by going to shul, or I'm just doing the right thing by turning the pages, there's no spirituality in that. That's just lower level. And I think what he's trying to do here is make us think, to realize that things are at different levels and to look through a different way.
This might not be a question you can answer in this short time, but did he live his life that way? Because I have very confused thoughts about his wives and his horses, and he's going down to Egypt to get his wives and his horses and his.
I don't know if everyone online heard that, but the question was, is it okay? I'll summarize. Did Shlomo HaMelech do what he said?
Practice what he preached.
Practice what he preached. I think the life of Shlomo HaMelech is very, very challenging in so many ways. But part of what he seems to have been doing is what people often do, and test the waters and see, can I really do this? Can I really do that? And arguably, and we don't know, but arguably, he may well have actually managed to raise up the level of what he did. I think a bit of that comes through from here. And if you do have that holy intention, it might be possible. Now, I'm not saying, and please, I've got to be very careful in case anyone listens to this. I'm not saying like go off and live the worst life possible and saying, but I'm doing it to try and elevate the sparks of holiness in all the. No, there are parameters in which we can't do, and he was on a different level to all of us. But there's certainly, maybe there's lots of his life that one sits back and thinks about.
Mm.
If you read through all of Tanakh, the kings that we had were challenging to understand the levels they got to. I mean, even David HaMelech, that we don't always necessarily understand. So I think someone wanted to make a question over here. So again, it's the idea that we have to try and work out what we're doing. And yet it is a good question. I think that's going to come through as to whether he himself is judging himself fairly. And it's very interesting. Sorry, I thought someone wanted to say something. It's very interesting. It goes on because he moves person. He starts with the words of Kohelet, third person. But then he suddenly moves to become very personal a bit later on. And he starts talking about himself, and there is a change about that. So again, there's the idea. We also have the idea of Shelo Lishma and Bar Lishma, that something that you're doing without the right intention can eventually lead to the right intention. You can have actions that you're doing for the wrong reason, but eventually they will actually, hopefully, come to the right intention. But again, let me just go back to an idea I used before. If we're going to shul, or even if we're not going to shul, wherever we are, if we daven, we say out to fill up. True prayer is meant to be with an understanding of what you're saying and who you're saying it to. And there is an idea that any single prayer that you say without that understanding, without that intention, is just trapped in this world. But if you say one prayer with the right intention, one prayer with the right intention, absolutely everything else gets carried out. So some people have said to me on Rosh Hashanah, you know, I haven't got just haven't got anything through. It's just my mind's been completely elsewhere. But if you get to the Elo and you get through and say Shema at the end with a bit of intention, you know what? The whole 26 hours goes up with you. and it's a very idea that we can achieve so much with that, but it's just we're not expecting. I keep trying to repeat this. We're not expected to be at the highest level. We're understanding where we are, and as long as we can make a little bit of progress, we can go through there. Just actually want to look on this comment, this last posit we were looking at, number 3. Ma Yitron La'adam. The Vilna Gaon reads this one quite interesting. The whole idea of Ma Yitron, what profit does a man have for all his labors? The Vilna Gaon interprets it differently. It says, Ma Yitron La'adam, what designates a person as more? What does he mean by that? Living on a higher level than an animal. She'amal tachat hashemesh. It's only if he's engaging the parts of his soul which are under the sun. Until he prioritizes self-fulfillment, his intellect, the human parts of his soul, he's nothing more than an animal. So what he's trying to say is if he's just working with the things under the sun, not engaging his neshama, then you're nothing other than an animal. So again, that's the idea coming through, that we've got to be a little bit more than animals. We've got to move forward. I think maybe we've got a little bit of time just to look at the 4th posuk, which again is another idea. Dohalech v'doba, va'aretz le'olam omedet. Any thoughts? A generation passes, generation goes, another comes. The earth remains the same forever. Any thoughts about that one?
HaKadosh Baruch Hu is making sure that we know that everything is renewed by him. But he doesn't renew us. He renews part of us, but he doesn't allow us to renew for another generation. We are lost for the generation we're living in only.
Yeah, indeed. Generations come and go, and we're limited. The world's unaffected by us to a certain extent. We're bound by time and space. I like it, but what else?
Or their testament, because it's always going to be here, so that's not going to change.
Yep. There's always going to be, and it's going to be here forever. Well, 6,000 years or however long, but it is going to be here, subject to what we do in wars. But yeah, it is going to be here. A generation passes away, another generation comes. Is the order right? Don't we have generations coming before they go? Doesn't it seem to be backwards?
Yeah.
Anything else we can think of?
Current as well, and current
generation, yeah. But anything else we can actually think of where the order is backwards? Olim b'yodimba. Do you remember Yaakov's dream? Described how they saw the angels ascending and descending. Yeah, surely angels are up there, they come down, but it isn't. It should have been the other way up. But it's exactly the same way here. And it's a connection with that. The whole idea, and it's being said here, generation passes, another one. Surely it should be the other way around. Now, Rabbeinu Nissim says that the angels Yaakov saw were representations of his growth and development over time. Hashem was saying to him, look, you can achieve so much. The first step is your sulam mutzav arza, the ladder on the ground. Each individual, we're told, has got our own unique path that can take us from that whole idea of the temporary physical realities to incredible heights of spirituality. But we all need to focus on our own ladder and stepping onto our own ladder and climbing up. Absolutely everything we do, we're on a ladder. We're trying to build our careers. We're trying to build our lives. It's step by step. And you can't really jump between ladders. You've got to choose your ladder and go on that. An idea was actually given to me a while ago of the difference between someone, let's use an idea. If someone goes to university and decides to study for medicine, the end of 5 or 7 years, they think, you know what, law is actually the career for me. They do 5 years in law and you say, no, actually accountancy is the career for me. Do another 5 years and they think, no, engineering's the career for me. End of 25 years, they've got the most amazing breadth of knowledge, but no depth. You get one person going into university to study to be a doctor, end of 25 years, they're a consultant, they're a review, they've got all these, because you spent your 25 years, you're not jumping, you're there. So you've got that expertise. And that's the idea. If you can commit yourself to that ladder, that single ladder, and that's what Yaakov was saying, or Hashem was saying to Yaakov, you commit to that ladder, you grow, and you can actually achieve that. Now, it's also, Yaakov couldn't see the top of the ladder. It reaches to Shemaim. He didn't know what was going on there. But if you actually commit yourself to keep growing and developing, there are incredible heights that you can go on. And again, Yaakov was warned that we don't always manage to grow, because some of the angels made a little bit of progress and went down, others went further. That's life. Sometimes we actually manage to achieve, sometimes some things we don't. Sometimes the angels stopped descending and started descending. We have to remember that that's part of life, and that's exactly what Shlomo Melech is teaching here. He's not describing generations leaving the stage to make room for the next. He's actually describing all of our generations. Sometimes it's a struggle. Sometimes we regress. Sometimes we're able to look at our generation and say, we've actually achieved something. And then you actually look at the generation and maybe look at where we are now. What have we achieved? Do we have world peace? Do we have harmony? Do we have everything else in the world? Or are we actually saying we're in a generation, we've made technological advances, but you know what? Everything else has stayed a little bit of a step backward. Where are we morally? Where are we intellectually? Where are we as a generation? And that's why we're told that generations come and go.
Isn't it also the case that each generation is sort of more distant from spirituality and commitment and those things? You go back generations, and people's attitudes are very different to all those things to what they are now. And people don't have careers for life anymore. For example, people don't join shuls anymore. People don't commit to volunteering for charities anymore. It's all like the generation that comes doesn't take from the generation that's going. It's like completely.
Well, I don't know if that's always the case, but I think it's certainly stark now.
Yeah.
I think it's been very worrying now that people seem to do things if they're paid for it. Even, I mean, I'm sorry to say, children, they'll do things if it can go on their CV, UCAS form, wherever generation they are in life. Whereas in my day, we used to volunteer for charities and go around and do things and didn't even put half the things on your UCA form or whatever it was in those days, because you just did it. That's what we do. But nowadays, it's again, you're right. It's a matter, but maybe we have to remember that we have to have a different approach. We have to remain grounded, but we've got to pass on the legacy of other generations of just remind you about some story I was told about. I can't remember which Rob it was. One great rabbi was on an aeroplane flying from Israel to America, and while he was in the airplane, he was sitting next to. He was obviously a business class, whatever. His sons and grandsons were further back in the plane. Apparently, there is something further back behind. Those of you who travel first class, there are seats towards the back of the plane. And he was sitting next to a businessman who made a comment. He said that your sons and grandchildren are showing you such respect and such treatment, but my children and grandchildren treat me like I'm an idiot. He said, well, that's the difference, because you believe in evolution. So every subsequent generation thinks they're more advanced than you. We believe that every generation is further from the original source, and therefore they try to lap in. But that's, again, part of the problem. That maybe in our world, people are forgetting that we're all getting more distant, and they've caught this idea that we're all better. But again, I think we have to realize that as well. We have to be based in Olam Haba. We have to be based in the ground. We have to actually do things, not as though we're angels, but as though we're impacting on the world. I think that's, again, part of the thing that we pass on to the next generation, that we connect with the world and we pass good deeds on to the world. And again, I think reminding ourselves that, yes, there is something here. We're able to connect with the ideas, but we shouldn't just be aiming for a spiritual world, because it says the earth is living here forever. And I think you're 100% right on this idea. The Haaretz, it's there, and we shouldn't isolate ourselves. I was just thinking about the idea of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who spent 12 years learning in a cave and plumbing the depths of Torah, and everything could have died with him if he hadn't come out of the cave. He would have forgotten about it. He would just been stuck there. But then he was told, on 13th year, Hashem said, no, don't just sit in your ivory tower. You've got to come out into the world. And you can have spiritual growth, but you've got to be involved in the world as well. And that's why he saw the two hadassim, the two myrtle leaves, to remind him of Shabbat, and to remember that he developed a legacy for the world to come. And I think that's part of it, the idea. But the Rambam brings forward an idea, and maybe this is not one to finish on. The Rambam brings forward an idea in his 8 chapters, Shmone Parachim, and tells us this whole idea that we've got to be linked to the earth, but we've got to have the spiritual idea. And the Rambam says very clearly that when we're physically healthy, he stresses that, Rambam was a doctor, we're physically healthy, when we're emotionally stable, and when we're intellectually free, then we can focus on our soul. But he says, if you're sick in any way, physically, emotionally sick, you can't focus on your neshama. And that's why you need to focus on the physical. You need to consider the world, but you can't just focus on the world. You've got to use the world, and I think this is what Shlomo Melech is trying to say. You've got to use the world and everything here to help us build our neshamas, to develop our neshamas and our souls. And maybe that's what we have to partially consider as we go through. So it's not depressing. It's a matter of using the world, using what's here, realizing that we can elevate what's here, using it to connect our soul, and then that way, hopefully, we can plug in and have a more meaningful and spiritual life. So, yes, it does seem depressing, and maybe that's what we have to take away from now at the moment. The world and everything going on is worrying. The world and everything going on is deeply concerning. But there is a way where we can connect to try and improve it and to work on it. We shouldn't just give up hope. And maybe that's, again, part of what we need to think about over El. Don't just give up hope and say, no, this year was bad, we can't improve. We've got to try and remember that there is something to go forward with and develop on a positive side. So maybe that's the message. And to conclude as I began, really to wish Annette Chamaruchin, to yourself, your father, And the Shiur, as I said, was Louis Nishmas Yaakov Noach Ben Tuvia, and as a Hashem, it's had Leah and his neshama had some benefit for his neshama, and that's what we're aiming for. The neshama, the soul to go up and to elevate. And please God, we will have a good and happy week. And as say, the idea of this whole book is to work for happiness. He gives us the secret of happiness, and that's what we've got to work for. Even though, and that's why I think that was one of the Tanya White, sorry,
Tanya.
was talking about Tanya White, was talking about the whole idea of pursuing happiness and achieving happiness. And that's surprisingly enough, however depressing it sounds, is what we're aiming at. So to have a happy life. So for you, those who've joined online, thank you. Those of you physically present, we'll get more seats out next week.
Sorry we're not with you.
We're sorry you're not with us too, but it's lovely
We're
to
in
see you
Brighton,
online.
sorry.
In Brighton,
Yeah.
we can't all be perfect. And Brighton is a nice place to be. And I will try and, yeah.